Hello, everybody. Welcome. I will now call to order the September 6, 2018 meeting of the Santa Barbara Local Agency Formation Commission. Will the clerk please read the roll?
Commissioner Seves?
Here.
Commissioner Geyer?
Here.
Commissioner Hartman? Here. Commissioner Shkamian? Here. Commissioner Lavanino? Here. Commissioner Richardson? Here. Commissioner Stark? Here. Commissioner Waterfield?
Here.
Commissioner
Over here.
Commissioner Well?
Here.
And Commissioner Wolf? Here. Here.
Thank you. At this time, please stand and join the commission in pledging allegiance to the flag. Jim?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Etta, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you very much. The mic check.
You know what? There was an attachment that was sent out from
Good.
Jacqueline.
The next item of business is the approval of minutes of the August 2nd meeting. Can I please get a motion? Second? Thank you. We need roll call on this? No roll call. Okay, nice. Ask for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, abstentions?
One abstain.
One abstain. Thank you. Public comment. Now is the time for members of the public to speak on items that are not on today's agenda. Are there any requests to speak on items not on the agenda?
Chair Wall and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on general public comment today.
Thank you. You still getting it? Okay. Ed, I think your mic is on. We're getting feedback. Thank you.
You're right, and I'll turn it off.
Thank you. The next item of business is the approval of the consent calendar. Are there any comments or questions from the commission?
Move approval.
Is there a second? Thank you. Please signify by say yes. Yes. Opposition? Abstain?
You can do whatever you want.
The next item is out-of-agency agreement item 1. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Will and members of the commission, out-of-agency service agreement number 1 is to consider recommendations regarding LAFCO application file number 18-04 for an out-of-agency service agreement for the City of Santa Maria OSR cooler.
Thank you. Executive Officer to report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Hood, LAFCO Executive Officer. I have a brief PowerPoint which is exactly opposite of all the information that you received on this item, but I'll make it as brief as I can. This is an out-of-agency service agreement that was filed by the City of Santa Maria. The background is the city, by resolution, filed the application on behalf of a OSR cooler property. Property is approximately 35.87 acres located at East Bed-Aravia Road, Santa Maria. Parcel is in the unincorporated area, and land use within the county of Santa Barbara is AG 240, 40-acre minimum parcel size, and the county's comprehensive plan designation is A15. Reason for this is the district city is requesting domestic water connection from the city of Santa Maria since the existing water well has been tested to have nitrate levels exceeding the state mandated maximum contaminant level and has been cited by Santa Barbara County Environmental Health Services for non-compliance. The existing site contains a cooling facility and service crop production and handling. And this is a map, but basically the highway on the left-hand side towards the middle of the map is the city limits. The project site is about a mile outside of the city limits and sphere of influence on Betaravia Road and Rosemary Road. It's outside the sphere, as I mentioned. And the city's existing water main runs adjacent to the site in Rosemary Road. In addition, fire services is provided to the site by county fire, not by the city. Government Code Section 56133C allows service outside the sphere of influence in response to an existing or impending health to the public safety and health of residents in the affected territory if the following requirements are met. The entity applying for the contract has provided to the Commission with a documented threat to the public health and safety, and that's included in your agenda packet. The City of Santa Maria and the property owner provided all the information as far as health and safety to your staff and to you by submittal of the staff report and exhibits. Going back into the history of the site, project was originally approved by the Santa Barbara County. An addendum to the environmental impact report was approved by Santa Barbara County as well on May 14th, 2008 for the produce cooling and processing facility pursuant to the Environmental Equality Act. Proposed domestic water connection would not result in additional impacts since there's no modification to the original development approval and no change in use. The site is already developed. Domestic water connection would provide to mitigate the health and safety to the public and employees. And we went back and looked a little bit deeper into the environmental issues. The addendum was submitted with the application, but legal counsel and myself looked at the original environmental impact report that was prepared. It was a report that was subject to uniform rules for agricultural preserves and farmland security zones in 2007. It was actually goes back beyond that. In 2004, I think, was the original documentation I looked at with the notice of preparation and so on. And we've included that in the website, and you have access by clicking on the LAFCO website, and a hard copy of the environmental impact report is also available for your review. It's about, the original EIR is over 600 pages, and it has appendices that include documents as well as that. We also, after consultation with county planning and development, they provided us with information that the development plan and conditional use permit allowed the use of on-site private wells for agricultural and potable water, and the applicant would now obtain a permit or substantial conformity determination before connecting to the facility to the water supply from Santa Maria. So we have proposed a change added to the out-of-agency service agreement as condition D, which now says that the out-of-agency agreement shall expire 1 year after approval unless the property owner obtains the necessary land use clearance or necessary permits from the County of Santa Barbara Planning and Development Department. The period may be extended by the Commission's executive officer for good use, good cause. So what the condition says that there could be some planning issues involved in connecting to the city's water supply, but if they get the permit, then or land use clearances, then from Santa Barbara County, then that would limit the amount of development and address the concerns of county planning and development. So in conclusion, the main issue, as I mentioned in the staff report, is whether the provision of water services to the cooler site is growth-inducing, and the extension of services can be found not to be growth-inducing for the following reasons: that there's an existing water line located adjacent to the site, that the only new infrastructure needed for the project would be a tie-in to the water line that's adjacent to the site, as I mentioned previously, and provision of services to the facility would be limited to this one property, would not be connected to any adjacent properties or any properties beyond the site. And the unique cause of this is an on-site failure of an on-site well that provides potable water to the office and to the site for employees. And determination is that there's, varying amounts of employees depending on the time of year and harvesting and that kind of thing. And the provision of potable water services to the ag site by an out-of-agency service agreement for health and safety issues is allowed by the LAFCO statutes, section 65-133B. And so my recommendation is to approve the out-of-agency service agreement with the conditions that are outlined in the agreement, and services would be limited, and it says provision of sewer services. What it should say is water services, not sewer. So we need to change that. It's in the agreement. And the executive officer shall record the agreement upon compliance with condition B, and it would be in effect. The property owner has agreed that not, if this ever gets to be annexed, which is unlikely, not to protest any future annexations, which is kind of language that we always include. There's no proposal to include the any sphere of influence change or any future annexation, but they have agreed to waive their protest provisions if it ever comes about. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and would conclude my comments. We may have a couple of people in the audience.
Thank you, Mr. Hood.
Thank you.
Are there any comments or questions from the commission?
Yeah.
Shane.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have two questions, and they're pretty basic. Are we required to make, or is LAFCO required to make specific findings regarding the existence of the public safety threat that justifies our doing an out-of-service agreement in this case? And similarly, are we required to make a specific finding regarding that there are no significant impacts, including the growth-inducing impact, for the reason is?
Mr. Hood?
I would say we don't need to make any findings because Environmental Health Services has already issued the statement that there is a threat to the health and safety of the employees. I'll defer to Bill if he has any additional comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Stark?
Yeah, so then I would take it that those findings would be implicit in our decision. They seem to be necessary for our being able to do this, if I understand correctly.
Okay, good. Any other questions, concerns? Greg?
I assume the fees have been paid? And then I have one follow-up question. On the expiration after 1 year, where the executive officer can extend it for a following year, I assume you'd notify the commission?
Absolutely. And we're hoping that this would not take anywhere close to that long. It should be, unless it needs to go to the Planning Commission, it should be within, I would say,
and all the fees have been paid?
A month.
All the fees have been paid?
All the fees have been paid, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Hood,
Roger.
would you put the map of the facility on the screen? Am I hearing you correctly then, from the freeway, they're going to run a line along Betaravia, or there's already a line on Betaravia?
There is, and the community development director can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the line is in Rosemary Road. And where it goes beyond that, beyond the project location, I would think it would continue, but at some point, obviously, if it's going to be used by the city, it needs to head west. I'm not sure if it's on Bed Arabia, but it runs down Rosemary.
Okay. And the adjacent properties, are they under the same system now?
When I looked at the site, which was admittedly through Google, there are some properties on Bed Arabia, but right next to the site to the west, it's vacant ag land. And I didn't look beyond the project site, but I'm not sure that they have an existing health and safety issue, a documented one at least. But it's a good question that if they could make the same argument, they could come back to LAFCO and ask for an out-of-agency service agreement. I'm not aware of any other properties that would qualify.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the area. That's why I'm asking the question. If there was other properties that may be impacted on the same issue, and we'll be revisiting this again. So that was my question.
Thank you.
Doesn't the map indicate that it's all ag, the surrounding ag?
It's all zoned ag, yes, that's correct. And there's a Williamson Act contract on this site, which is, yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of developments that are to the west side that are more adjacent to the freeway.
Commissioner Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In Exhibit B in our packet, this comes from the County of Santa Barbara Public Health Department. And on page 3, there's a directive that Central City Cooling is directed to submit a plan and timeline for installation of treatment equipment to reduce nitrate levels no later than July 20th, 2017. Do we know if that, first of all, I find it interesting that this is in our packet, but since it is in our packet, I ask the question, has that been completed?
I'll defer to the city again, but my understanding is that, this would be in lieu of any treatment of the water on site, that connecting to the city's water line would not require this to take place. I'm not sure if they've gone through any mitigation, not being that familiar with the project, but I'll defer to the city. I'm sure that they would know.
Is there a representative from the cooler? I guess I'm concerned. So this is when they needed to have the installation in place, and that was 2017. So we're a year later, and so am I to assume that that hasn't occurred, and that's why this proposal is in front of us?
Again, I'll defer to the city. They would know. So I don't know if this has taken place or not. I didn't go back to the requirement, the July 20th, 2017 requirement that they mitigate the nitrate levels.
If you know.
Please state your name and who you represent.
Members of the commission, my name is Chun Ing. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Santa Maria.
Thank you.
The nitrates treatment system has not yet been installed. In discussion with the property owner and the property owner's representatives, it's cost prohibitive. We believe that the connection would be the most logical solution, given that the main is existing adjacent to the site.
Thank you. Any questions?
Commissioner Stark. This falls under the categorization of raw curiosity. How's the water getting to the site now? I understand this they're still using the nitrate exceeding wells, is that right?
The project site is served by wells, yes.
Same one. Okay, thanks.
So I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So they're using the wells that have nitrates in them that have been deemed unsafe.
The facility, the owner has posted signs indicating that that it exceeds levels. And I may defer to the property owner's representative that can provide a little bit more information.
Okay, and then the other question is, why is this now a year later, and why didn't this come to us sooner? If it was found to be cost prohibitive, it seems like we should have seen this come to us much sooner. So maybe you can answer that.
Yeah, Brian Dealman with Bethel Engineering.
Thank you.
Good, okay. It has been a little bit of a process, and I believe that initial date that you talked about was to come up with a plan to address it. These nitrate levels have been in and out of exceedance, but more out than in. So he's been researching options to treat the water, and like Mr. Chung said, it's just cost prohibitive at this point. So there is already a connection to the line, to the main that's out in the street, to provide fire service water. So the connection's already made. All we're trying to do now at this point is to make an additional small connection to feed the office. The personnel in the office wash their hands with the nitrate exceeding water, but nobody consumes it because the owner is providing bottled water for everybody.
Thank you.
May I ask a question, please? This nitrate issue, the requirement to put in the new system would have been if you're going to continue using the well.
Correct.
So with Santa Maria providing the water, it no longer becomes an issue. Is that what I'm hearing?
For potable water.
Right.
But the cooling facility goes through,
you're still going to use the well for the cooling facility.
Water, so all of the rest of the operational water not involved with potable water is still going to be handled by the well.
And that'll all be noticed, and the employees know that that's for specific use and not for general.
Well, the only place that they can drink from is sinks and fountains and all that, and that will be connected to domestic water.
Okay.
Everything else that's like a hose bib that's for washing down the floor or something is already signed and will continue to be signed.
And then for Santa Maria or for our executive, should we move this forward today, how soon can the hookup occur?
To get a permit. They, Mr. Chairman, they need to get a county permit. The condition D that we added, they cannot connect until that permit is applied for and issued. And it depends if it's something that is administrative that can go through the planning director or if it needs to go to the planning commission. So it could take a little bit of time. It's not immediate.
If I may interject, there's also a set of plans that have to be developed that will build the infrastructure.
Okay.
And that has not been accomplished yet. I would imagine that's a 4 to 6 week thing.
No. The term our executive used, a little bit of time, is a little concerning because in the planning process, that could be.
We're shooting for under 6 months, obviously.
Okay.
We're going to push best of our ability.
Commissioner Iskanian.
Well, I just want to get straight. I thought that this memo said that you had a year, and then you would extend it for them to get all of this business done. It's not as if they have to wait. They can start their planning like tomorrow, correct? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any more questions, comments?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, thank you.
I'll move staff recommendation with the one change that Mr. Hood made. Instead of sewer service, that we mentioned that it is water service.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Then I'll second that motion.
Thank you. There's a second. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion passes. God, I feel lucky. Next item is business item number 1. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Walt and members of the Commission, business item number 1 is to consider and approve an engagement letter agreement with Bartlett, Pringle & Wolf, LLP, to perform audits of financial statements for Santa Barbara LAFCO for the years ending June 30th, 2018, 2019, and 2020.
Thank you. Mr. Hood?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have received an engagement letter from Bartlett, Pringle & Wolf, and they have been the firm that Santa Barbara LAFCO has been using for some time. I've had the pleasure of working with them. I found them to be very efficient, very economical as far as their charges, and produce a good product at the end. So they are proposing to extend through the engagement letter for the years ending June 30th, 2018, 2019 and 2020 at a minimal increase. I think we're right now at $5,800 per year, and they're proposing for 18-19 $6,000. So it would go up $200 to $300 per year until fiscal year 2021. And there was some research done back in 2012 by your previous executive officer that found that there was great difficulty in getting financial auditors. They're kind of being phased out for governmental services. And we're lucky, I think, to have Bartlett, Pringle, and Wolf that are local in Santa Barbara. The one issue that I thought you might want to talk about, at least, is issuing an RFP, request for proposal, and see if we need to make a change at this point. It's probably not bad to change audit firms if we can find someone that can move ahead and offer the same services and the same cost that Bartlett, Pringle, and Wolf use. But I would recommend that we stay with them and authorize the chairman to sign the engagement letter for 2018, which is the year past 19 and 2020. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. I included a copy of the engagement letter and a correspondence from John Britton, who is one of the principals in the firm that I have worked with. But I find that they change their analysts annually. I never have two people that are doing the same work. I think that's intentional because you want to have a fresh look at, not that LAFCO is that complicated. We have a budget that's, $500,000 per year, much less than most agencies, and a lot of special districts don't have budgets that are much bigger than LAFCO's budget. So I'd recommend that we engage them again for the next 3 fiscal years, and be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Hood. Any comments from the commission? Craig.
I'd move approval of this.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second? Public comment.
Chair Walt, members of the commission, we have no requests to speak on this item.
Could I just say one thing? I'll second it, but I'm really impressed. I didn't know that last piece as far as switching the analyst. That's significant, and that would be an argument to put an RFP out. But since you have fresh eyes on it every year, I think that's significant. So I will second the motion.
Great. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. The next item is business item 2. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Walt and members of the commission, business item number 2 is to consider support for Assembly Bill 2258, LAFCO grant funding.
Mr. Hood.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been following this bill since the act that Pedro Nava with the Little Hoover Commission identified some issues with inactive special districts that are based on determinations made on a study that they are not functioning correctly. And so LAFCO, Cal LAFCO has sponsored a bill that would require the Strategic Growth Council to consult with LAFCOs where we have a district that would need to be dissolved. We don't particularly have any. We have one in this county which will remain nameless since we've gone through a process of trying to dissolve a particular district and had a protest hearing. But around the state, there are a significant amount of districts that could be dissolved, and CSDA, I think, is in agreement with that. So Cal LAFCO is asking to support AB 2258 by Caballero, Assemblyman, and it's sponsored, co-sponsored by several legislators. One interesting part of this bill is that there was originally $1.5 million as an appropriation for the LAFCOs. The financing was deleted fairly recently, so the bill would basically be just a bill that would set up a process without any funding at this point, in the hopes that next year or following years that the bill could come back and that the financing would be inserted into the bill so that we could move ahead with this. So those are my comments, and Cal LAFCO has some talking points that they've distributed on the grant funding mechanism for this bill, and I've also included a copy of the latest copy of AB 2258. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'd recommend that
Thank you, Mr.
support the
Hood.
bill.
Are there any questions for Mr. Hood?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question, and I noticed that it says that, assuming there's funding, et cetera, that the Strategic Growth Council will give preference to a LAFCO whose decisions are consistent with the goals of a sustainable community strategy under a specific section of the government code. Is that of any significance to us?
Well, again, I think this is for LAFCOs around the state. I don't think we have any issues in that regard, not that I know of, in Santa Barbara County, but it is an issue for many counties and many LAFCOs that there are determinations that need to be made to qualify. So I'm not sure that we would do that, but we would support that.
Thank you, Mr. Hood. Other comments, questions? If not, the chair will entertain a motion. Someone? Moved and seconded. Thank you very much. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. The next item is information item number 1. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Welt and members of the Commission, informational item number 1 is to receive and file a report on the 2018 Cal LAFCO Annual Conference at the Tenaya Lodge in Yosemite, October 3rd through the 5th, 2018.
Mr. Hood.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. We have secured some accommodations at the Tenaya Lodge, which was a big issue for us when it was announced that the conference was going to be held there. We were not able to get any rooms because they were completely booked within probably even prior to the announcements. But we did have, thanks to Jacqueline, we had some cancellations and were able to accommodate our group at the lodge, which is always good to not have to drive 20 miles from Oakhurst to Yosemite. And so we're getting ready now, and we have a draft conference program that I've included. It's not finalized, so I'm hoping to see the final program, but we have a group that's going to be going up to Yosemite, and we've had 2 cancellations in the last 2 or 3 days, but we are now attempting to reassign the rooms at the lodge, and we are not going to be impacted by getting refunds because those cancellations were in time to qualify for refunds. I guess less than a $20 processing fee that would be secured, but we can cancel the rooms that we don't use. So that's the latest, and I'm pretty happy that we're all now in the conference site, which has always been a concern if we had to drive there. And the remote mobile workshop is closed, but we have sent a waiting list that a couple of our commissioners would like to be added to. I'm not sure where the mobile workshop is going, but we think it's going to be kind of an interesting process. That's on Wednesday morning, first day of the conference. So that's just the latest update, and it's an information item.
Thank you, Mr. Hood. Are there any comments or questions from the Commission? If not, the next item is information item number 2. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Walt and members of the Commission, informational item number 2 is to receive and file a report on pending LAFCO applications.
Mr. Hood.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. We have some current applications. We went through a few months without having anything active, but now we have some fairly significant requests for reorganizations. I'll go through them briefly. Bailey Avenue, Sphere of Influence, revision and reorganization, City of Lompoc, about 150 acres of ag land on the west side of the city. And the application was submitted, but it was pointed out by me to the city that prior to submitting an application to the commission to update its sphere of influence, representatives from the city and representatives from the county shall meet to discuss the proposed new boundaries and explore methodology to reach agreement on development standards and planning and zoning requirements within the sphere of influence. So that didn't take place. So I've advised the city and county planners that they need to meet, and even though the application has been submitted, it's not complete until there is a consultation between the city and county folks on the planning and zoning of this ag land that's proposed for housing, which is not all bad, but it's agricultural land, which is one of our prime directives that LAFCO needs to protect agricultural land and direct development away from ag land.
I have a question on that one.
Go ahead.
Mr. Hood, is that east or west? Where's Bailey? It's east? It's west? Okay.
It's west.
Towards the prison?
Towards the ocean.
Towards the ocean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, you were positive thinking towards the ocean. I was thinking towards the prison. Probably more expensive than selling house.
Prisoner housing.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Then we just had, I'll just go through the rest of these very briefly. With the Thompson Sphere of Influence, this is an annexation of the Carpinteria Sanitary District. We had one similar to that about a year ago. La Cumbre, a mutual water company, Sphere of Influence revision and annexation. This is the office site that has a failing septic tank that will be proposed to be annexed to Goleta San. Formation of the San Antonio Basin Water District. That's something I've been advising you. It's about an 80,000 acre water district, similar to Guayama, although a moderate, not severe overdraft situation. Oak Hill Sphere of Influence, and then there's a proposal that was sent to us by Goleta Sanitary District that is 4 or 5 acre parcels that have received a will serve letter outside the district boundaries, and it's zoned R4, which I think is residential ranchettes with 3 houses and 1 vacant lot. And I advise them to retain a consultant to process this, because if they decide to process this as the landowner, it will be a very difficult, convoluted process that most people would not know how to do. So they've retained someone, but my question basically is, why is this necessary? If they have septic tanks, and why do they need to connect to the sewer system? Because 5 acre residential ranchette development that's already constructed with 1 vacant lot. So most of these get to be very interesting before your commission gets to see these, but we have several, 5 or 6 that are pending right now. A couple have been submitted.
Mr. Hood. Item C. Mr. Hood. La Cumbre. Yeah.
That was the one that has the Cumbre Mutual Water Company. That's the one that is basically the office site that has a failing septic tank that they need to connect to the sewer system.
Okay, item D.
We did that.
Did we do all these?
Yeah, we did them all.
Okay, wake up. Thank you. We now go to commissioners' announcements. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Looking good. Executive officers' comments.
I was going to have a public comment. I was told I should make this a commissioner's report. I just want to let the commissioners and the public know that the League of Women Voters of Santa Barbara is going to have a pros and cons forum on all the state ballot measures and the local county ballot measures on October 6th at the October 9th at the library, the Faulkner Gallery. Everybody's welcome, and that materials by the State League of Women Voters on the pros and cons of the state measures are available online at cavotes.org. Very helpful. They're like non-adversarial. They tell you what the arguments are on both sides and basically how these things work. So I encourage you to spread the word and remind everybody to vote.
Thank you.
I just wonder if you'll be moderating, doing your usual great job.
I can't I can't guarantee either greatness or usualness. I'm at least one of the people moderating the one at the library that's accurate.
Free of charge.
Yeah, free charge, no charge. The CDs are available for.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hood, comments?
The only comment, I think I've said most of everything, but I will be, I've been invited by the Montecito Association next Monday to advise them of governmental options available to communities. And so that will be a very interesting discussion. Obviously, I'm just providing information and don't have a position on any of the options. So just so you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
That's it.
Okay, well done, everybody. I will now adjourn this meeting to Thursday, October the 11th in Santa Maria at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much. Thank you, Etta.
Thank you.
Excellent.